I gotta clean off this cart. Under my current system, I put my TBR list on the top of my cart, and then once those are read, I put them on the next shelf down to eventually do one of these recap videos for. This is most of what I've read since, I'd say, end of March. We're going to start with comics, and then we'll do novels, and then we'll do audiobooks. We have a huge stack over here on the floor of just everything I've read for the manga tournament. You should go watch the manga tournament videos. They're a lot of fun. I use the compile system to dive deep into each of these and trying to give as objective a view as I can of the various titles as they go up against one another. So give those videos some love if you're interested in me looking at any of these manga titles. For 3-star comics, we have Go-Go Loser Ranger volume number 8. This is a title that from its outset, I've been a little bit confused about the direction that it's trying to go. There was a very bold decision made early on about the character we were following. Then I feel like it has meandered a bit. Found fairly entertaining, but ultimately I didn't retain much of what I read. I'm hoping that this refocuses a little bit in the future. Miss Marvel, The Fists of Justice, even with my Miss Marvel bump, this one was just this kind of weak tie-in with the main universe and what's happening there. It was fun seeing Miss Marvel play off of some of these other characters. So she has a team up with Wolverine and some of the X-Men, with Moon Knight, and then with Venom. And in each scenario, there's a little bit of them coming face to face and having to sort out their differences and work together. I didn't feel like the writing was very strong. And again, it's tying into something that I'm not really following. So as it's kind of weird offshoot comic that they put out as a standalone, it's not very cohesive. Wonder Woman Dead Earth. Now, Wonder Woman is not a character that I usually gravitate towards, but this is illustrated by Daniel Warren Johnson, and I am trying to pick up as much Daniel Warren Johnson stuff as I can ever since I read Do a Powerbomb, just because I love his art style. The art does not disappoint in this volume at all. It is just as gritty and post-apocalyptic future, hellscape as you would expect it to be. The emotional side of his writing that worked so well in Murder Falcon and Do a Powerbomb was absent here. They try to make some commentary with Wonder Woman about the duty, protection, these types of topics, but none of it really lands. And it ultimately ends up in a kind of muddled spot. So the writing I felt was weaker here, but the art's still amazing. On to 4-star reads for comics. So I picked up Kaiju Caramelize number 7 recently. And these are coming out super slow compared to some of the other comics I'm reading. And it's really disappointing because I love this comic so much. I was a little disappointed in this one only because we finally got up to a point where we're doing the typical thing of there's a secret and we're not going to reveal it. The secret in this case is that she turns into a giant monster, and we're not going to reveal it. And then of course the main love interest eventually figures it out. So we had just gotten up to that point and I was like, okay, cool, like now we can do something different, we can go in a different direction, and boy does it. Kuroi, our main character, is whisked away to an island. I think it might be the island of her birth, although I'm not sure because we visited that one in the past. But in any case, we are taking her and isolating her and trying to prevent any of this future development of their relationship in exchange for developing a little bit more of the kaiju side of the story. I didn't care for that direction. It was still fun, and it was still a kaiju girl story, but I felt like we had just gotten up to a really critical point, and then rather than try to address it and meet that head on, we're doing this side story. So I'm waiting for her to go back to the city and deal with the relationship issues that this is going to cause. Ski Fujimoto's Look Back. So this is the same author as Chainsaw Man. I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about side projects that Fujimoto did in between like one major arc of Chainsaw Man leading into the other, and how they felt like Look Back was the stronger of the two. Honestly preferred Goodbye Eri a little bit more than this one, and I think it's going to come down to the characters and the medium, because Goodbye Eri was playing so much with the idea of cinema and our perceptions, and I felt like it was multifaceted and multi-layered and a lot more open to interpretation. This one similarly plays with time a lot, with memory, and I feel like the two are very good complements to each other. I just felt like Goodbye Eri was a little bit stronger of a title. I'd still highly recommend, if you are a fan of Fujimoto's work on Chainsaw Man and you want to see him tackle like a slice of life story, he is every bit as competent as he is with the over-the-top shonen action as in developing relationships between these characters. It's really beautiful, and I would highly recommend that you pick it up. Danger and Unknown Risks is another one that got a 4-star from me. So this is a story about a person who's destined to save the world, discovering that maybe the world isn't what they expected it to be. It'd be really difficult to talk about this book without including spoilers. You can find it usually in like the kids section of a Barnes & Noble or something like that. But it's a lot of fun and very creative and clever. And I think anybody at any age can enjoy the story. It's got a talking dog. It's got very interesting concepts of magic. It's got a little bit of a time loop story. So if you're a fan of any of those things, this is definitely a strong title to pick up. Chroma was one of my 24 for 2024 titles. This one I feel like it was a lot of the appeal for me in Chroma is in the art. So there is a city that is completely devoid of color because the monsters outside of the city can sense color. It's like sound to them. And so everything has to be black and white and drab. They have to cover their food in like chalk and things like that. And this follows a boy who is starting to question if the world really works the way that their religion and their society is telling them that it does. This has some pretty heavy themes in it, and there are a few points here that really don't work for me, especially toward the end, but the art is beautiful. I thought the creatures and the world were very interesting, and it's all based on color, which in a visual medium like comic books is a great thing to make the cornerstone of your book. Beta Ray Bill, this is another Daniel Warren Johnson title, another one that's tying into a larger story, much like the Miss Marvel tie-in. But here I felt like it worked enough on its own standalone feeling. I'm vaguely aware of what's going on with Thor in the Marvel comics, and so I was able to follow the story just fine. And it really does center Beta Ray Bill as the protagonist here. He has a clear goal. He has lost the ability to revert to his humanoid form. I'm not going to say human form. He's not human. He has to go on this quest to find an item that will grant him the power to get back to that point where he can transform at night, or transform back into his normal form. A lot of over-the-top action, a lot of like mixture of high fantasy, sci-fi, and again, that beautiful Daniel Warren Johnson art all the way through. This one has a stronger hold on the emotional weight of the story. The last shot is clearly meant to evoke a certain feeling. However, it is a bit ambiguous, so I'm not quite sure what the ultimate message was supposed to be. That is the one thing that could have elevated it, was a little bit stronger of a thematic message, clearer takeaway that I was supposed to get from this, like Murder Falcon, like Do a Powerbomb. So just a little bit short of some of Daniel Warren Johnson's other work, but still something that was a lot of fun to read. Even if you don't know anything about Beta Ray Bill, if you just want to see some like crazy fight scenes and some cool like spaceship fighting giant monsters, I'd pick this up. 5-star reads for comic books. We have Miss Marvel, The New Mutant. I did a review for this one. Go check it out. It's 5 stars. I love Miss Marvel. Even with my bias for Miss Marvel, I can recognize that this is a strong title that really gets the core of the character. Excellent execution on this one. The 3 stars for the books. So These Deadly Prophecies got 3 stars. I don't want to talk anymore about this book. I already did a review for it. The world building was not very good. The relationship did not work for me. Go check out my review if you want more details on exactly what didn't work and what did work in this story. Also did a review for To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods. I'm going a little bit against the grain of the reviews I've seen, which are quite scathing with this title. I didn't think it was like the strongest thing I read. I'd read a sequel. I did a review for this up on my channel. If you want to know more, you should go check that out. Karen Warren Slights is my other 3-star read for this month. This was something that was recommended to me by a friend years ago and has been on my TBR list on Goodreads for a very long time, and I finally got around to reading it. I did find it a fascinating character study. It reminded me a lot of Closer, and I really enjoyed Closer. But the character here, the main character, is such a terrible person, and there are parts of it that are kind of funny, but it never really comes around. And so I don't like that the character never really changes or grows. She tries several times to do better. The story here is also crazy. It's wild. So what happens is this girl has a near-death experience when she's like 18 or 19. And instead of going to heaven or an afterlife like she's expecting, she gets into this room where everyone that she's slighted, everyone that she's like kind of miffed over her entire life, is there to enact tortures upon her. And so she eventually gets to the point where she is simultaneously like trying to get back there. Definite content warnings on here about like and murder, because she gets to the point where she is trying to get back to this room. She's trying to see, was it just like a vision she had? Is it really happening? She tries to get other people there, so she's trying to like just get them barely to where they're not dead and then bring them back. It's in a lot of ways a pretty sick book, but I found the character study very interesting. I just didn't like that there wasn't any growth in the character, and she does such horrible things. Like outside of this pursuit for this room, she's just a gross person, a terrible person. She does such mean things to those around her. And so an interesting one, definitely if you are looking for something that's in the horror vein, but maybe a little bit different with like a crazy premise, you would want to check it out. If you're really into like in-depth character studies, some of the dives in here though are a little bit too deep. There's parts where she's reading through other people's work, or she decides to write a journal as another character, and that goes on for pages and pages and pages. And so it's just like so many bizarre choices. I didn't know how to feel about it. On to 4-star reads. So I read The Vanishing Half. This is literary fiction, and I'm not a big literary fiction reader. One of my students actually recommended this to me. This is about a pair of twins, very light-skinned African-American girls who grow up and have completely different lives. One marries a very dark-skinned man, has a very dark-skinned daughter, ends up going back home. The other goes and marries a white man, and she is passing as white. And so it deals with very indirectly their relationship to each other, because ultimately their daughters meet up, and it's this very like slow moving character study. It also like cares nothing for chronological order. They will be talking about how these two girls grew up in this town, and oh, by the way, this town was founded 50 years ago by this guy, and this was his whole thing. And then, oh yeah, the girls, oh, they left one day, and then they came back. But let's talk about how they grew up, and this is what they were like in school. And anyway, back to when they disappeared, this is where they went. And then this character, you follow one for a very long time, her story, and then you jump over far, far into the book to the other character's perspective. And the whole time you're jumping into the past and the future. It's very disconnected and hard to follow if you're not paying attention. But it was a very interesting read because it relies so much on the characters. It's such a character-driven work, and I don't necessarily get a lot of that in my normal reading. So it was something refreshing to read, and I really enjoyed it. I'm glad that my student recommended it, but it fell short because of that the difficulty of the reading, and the ending having one of these very literary fiction endings where it's very ambiguous, like what is supposed to be taken away from it as these characters like go on their next journey. I read A Tempest of Tea, gave that one 4 stars. The review for this one just dropped on Thursday of this week, so please go check that out. As I say many times in the review itself, if you like Six of Crows, I think you'll like Tempest of Tea. They are very similar in a number of ways. I also have a review up for The Scarlet Alchemist. This is one that I felt like the opening bit was very strong. It had some pacing issues, and then at the very end, there was some very heavy-handed sequel baiting that I did not care for. It was at a 3.5. I decided to bump it up to a 4. So know that it was borderline. And that the best thing about this book is the absolute savagery that the main character enacts on people who try to mess with her in the opening third of the book. Last physical 4-star read was How to Defeat a Demon King in 10 Easy Steps. So this is one of my first forays into lit RPG. I'm really liking the lit RPG subcategory. I felt like this one was just a little bit too on the nose. It's very, very heavily Zelda coded. If you like any Zelda games, I think you'll get a kick out of this one. This is a world where the characters are aware of the idea that there is a chosen one, that there's a demon lord, that these are the rules that their world operates on. X number of years, the demon lord rises, and then a hero rises, and this time the demon lord has taken over too much of the world, and we're a little bit worried. So this person's going to step up, and even though they're not the hero, they're going to try to be the hero. They're going to try to do something. And the way they go about doing it, these odd classes that they decide to take up, is just so fun. I felt like the ending was a little bit heavy-handed and didn't really work for me, but it also very, very quick. Like, I was reading it and going, how are we gonna finish this out? How are we gonna get this done? It's only like a couple of pages. But overall, just fun, adventure story, RPG elements, great entry point for a lit RPG. I think if you read this, you'll have a good sense of if you want to read more of that genre. And it's a shorter one. Only one 5-star read from this section as far as the physical books I have, and that's The Ice Pick Surgeon by Sam Keen. Sam Keen was recommended by one of the viewers on YouTube with one of my shorts. I was talking about nonfiction reads that I enjoyed, and I mentioned Mary Roach, and this was another name that came up. If you like Roach's style, you should check out Sam Keen. So I looked at his list of books. We have the Disappearing Spoon, which is another one of his titles, but I thought the Ice Pick Surgeon sounded the most interesting. So this is a nonfiction book about all the terrible science experiments we've done in the name of like advancing our understanding of the world, and it deals a lot with the morality of what should we do with that data. It's a sticking point, especially with things when you're talking about like the Nazi experiments on hypothermia, for example, where that is the best data we have for what actually happens when people are freezing to death. But it was done to prisoners who were frozen to death. Do we have a moral responsibility to use that information in a way to honor these people who gave their lives to teach us these things, or do we need to reject it because the methodology, the way that it was obtained, was so heinous? We don't want to encourage this type of torture in the name of scientific advancement. So a lot of questions like that, a lot of very uncomfortable discussions about, for example, the Tuskegee experiments in Guatemala. The Ice Pick Surgeon is lobotomies, like the orbital lobotomies. So they go into some detail about going in through the eye socket to remove parts of the brain. And so, not for the squeamish. I'm generally not very comfortable with those types of things anyway. I was able to get through it, but there were a few parts where it was rough. I was reading this in my class and walking around and being like, ugh. Great information, told in a really engaging way. I'd highly recommend this to anybody who's looking for something a little bit different with their nonfiction reads. Just real quick, we'll go over some audiobooks that I've read recently. I read Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno Garcia. So I had previously read The Daughter of Dr. Moreau and did not care for it. It had some weird things with multiple perspectives. And this was basically like my second chance. Like if I didn't like this one, I wasn't going to pick any more up from Garcia. I will say that I really liked Silver Nitrate. I thought it was a really fun kind of gothic horror story with film as one of its main focuses, and I really liked a lot about it. I could see someone feeling like it's a little bit too slow, but if you're a fan of something like The Death of Jane Lawrence, for example, I think you'd really get a kick out of Silver Nitrate. I read Mushroom Blues on audiobook, and then I went out and I bought the hardcover. I have a review for it. I loved it. It's a very weird setting. It's fungal punk. Go check out my review of that one. Fungal punk detective story is like the pitch line. I read The Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. It wasn't my favorite. I do want to pick up more TJ Klune because the vibe of the story was really fun. This is so hard to describe. The feeling of the story was so fun. I just didn't like the particular plot we were dealing with like technology versus nature. I feel like if I read another one of his stories with maybe a little bit different of a setting or some different characters, I would maybe jive with it a little bit more because the feelings were there. It's just the plot and the characters weren't working for me. I did end up reading The Disappearing Spoon by Sam Keane on audiobook. I gave it 3 stars. It was not I was right to pick Ice Pick Surgeon as my initial jump into Keane's books. Same engaging storytelling. One deals with the periodic table, and I feel like because you're dealing with the periodic table, it felt more disjointed to me, who's not very familiar with chemistry. The Ice Pick Surgeon, it's almost chronological. Like it goes from piracy to like modern day, 21st century crime. And then it goes into like the future. With The Disappearing Spoon, we're kind of jumping around, trying to make these connections between the different elements. But the other thing is I'm not going to remember what the elements are. I'm not going to remember what francium or beryllium does, and like which one of these was featured in this story. Again, because I'm not, I don't have that background, and I'm not that familiar with the periodic table. It's been a while since high school. And so still a lot of really entertaining stories, still some things that I am glad that I read and I can pull out as like little tidbits of information, but not as strong. And it's purely the topic, right? It's purely the content, because the writing is just as good. The anecdotes are just as fun. It's just I wasn't jiving with the subject matter. This is the last one I'll end on. I read The Secrets of the Greek Revival, which was Mystery House #1, because in searching for a horror book at one point, I was recommended through Libby this Niagara Falls story. It's one of the later Mystery House books. This book is like the anti-YA book. It is a book about this group of like elderly ladies who have all, like, their kids are all in college. They're all settled down. They're looking for a new adventure, and they decide that they're going to revitalize this house in downtown San Antonio, which was another connection I could make, because that's fairly local to where I live. And so that was fun. And it was interesting seeing a book that seems like it's aimed at an older generation, because I'm so used to reading the YA books. To see these older ladies, like 60, 70 years old, going and solving this haunted house mystery. It does do one of the things with ghost mysteries that I don't care for. I'm not going to go into too much of spoilers there. But ultimately, I think it ended up at 3 stars, because it's not... The story was so-so. The story was pretty straightforward, and I don't think I'm the target audience, but it was very refreshing to read something different. Hey, appreciate you coming by while I unhaul my cart. I hope that there's something within this mishmash of nonsense that you found interesting, that maybe you would like to go and take a closer look at. If there's something in here that I've not reviewed and you'd like to see a review for it, drop that down in the comments below. Please be sure to like and subscribe as well, so we can build this corner of our BookTube community. I hope your reading journey is going well, as always, and until the next one, take care.